property management. Think I know what that is, of course. I haven't spoken to anybody who is in the franchise side of it, so I'm excited to kind of hear your background, how you got this thing started, what you guys do. So why don't you share with me what even brought you to franchising the concept?
Yeah, absolutely. So residential property management is what we do, and we take the burden of managing the tenants, the toilets, the troubles for people that have and own rental properties. We take that burden away from them, and we become the landlord for them, so that they can sit back and be able to relax, own the property, but not have to deal with the day-to-day of it. So we collect the rent, we handle issues that come up, and we have tools and systems and automations to be able to make that easier for our franchise owners. And what happened for us is back in 2006, I was working with my co-founder, Aaron Marshall, who was a successful real estate broker, and we were selling bank foreclosures. And there's a certain element of selling bank foreclosures for banks that is property management related. You're handling sometimes cash for keys. Sometimes you're handling situations with the occupants. So people actually thought that we did property management back then, but we didn't. And in 2007, we started buying some properties, wanting to flip those properties and keep some as rentals. Some of them wouldn't actually flip. If you know back and we remember what happened in the real estate market during that time, some things started to shift. And so we started hanging on to those as rentals. And by default, we were trying to figure out a property management solution and realized that there wasn't as good of an option for us at the time, and a provider of property management that really aligned with what we were trying to accomplish. And our foreclosure business was starting to go down or slow down because of some of the foreclosure acts that were passed. And so it just seemed like an opportune time here in the Salt Lake City area for us to start our own company. And so in 2007, 2008, we launched our own local company. One, to manage our own properties, but also to meet some of the demand and the need that we had in our own Keller Williams location that we were officing out of. And I took the lead in that company in the property management sector and began growing that, scaling the business, got to the point of where, hey, we actually have something really great here. This is a great business. It's a great time for this business. Let's go nationwide with this. And kind of interesting way that we thought about the different ways of going nationwide. One was, of course, to open up our own locations. And the other one was to franchise. And I think the concept of franchising, it was new to me and to Aaron, but it was something that was really interesting. Kind of funny side story. I watched an episode of Undercover Boss with Amit, the founder of Menchie's. This is in October of 2013. And it inspired me so much that I went to Aaron the next day and said, Aaron, I think we should franchise. And let's look at this process. Let's kind of evaluate some of the pros and cons. And this will give you a little insight into his personality. We decided, okay, let's table this for a week. Let's come up with some of our lists of things to evaluate and research. Well, a week goes by and I said, well, Aaron, here's what I think. And he said, what do you mean? I already have the website. I already have the franchise attorney. I already have, we're starting on the FDD,
Oh my goodness.
Just, that was him. And he was just so entrepreneurial. My role is much more, let's get the processes in place. Let's make sure that we got the systems, the infrastructure, and integrate those pieces together. And so we started selling in 2014 franchises. We sold our first couple at end of 2014. We had our very first Keyrenter training with new franchisees. We had 4 coming in January 2015. And since then, of course, as they say, the rest is history up to this point. So,
yeah, wow. What a cool beginning. And gutsy move, man. You get the business going in 2008. You have to have a lot of guts, right?
Well, the interesting thing about, foreclosures, of course, started booming, right? I mean, 2009 was actually the best year for foreclosure sales. Mm-hmm. But of course, there was legislative put out there, the Foreclosure Act of 2009 that was put out there. It prevented banks from foreclosing. And so our business literally dried up overnight after that act was passed, or it took a couple of months to dry up, I guess I should say. But property management, though, is such an interesting business and a business model where when the market is hot, it's a great time for property management because there's a lot of people buying more properties, trading, exchanging. A lot of people that are looking at taking advantage of For example, low interest rates that we saw several years ago and up until this year, really, a lot of people buying. But when the market's down, it's even better because so many people are needing to now rent homes instead of being able to buy, which is the current market climate that we have today. And many more people that own properties don't want to sell or they can't sell. So they're turning those into rentals. And we're seeing on both sides the number of tenants increasing dramatically and the number of rentals entering the pool to try to meet the 6 million home shortage that we have in the country. And so it's just a good time for the business back then in 2008, 9, 10, 11. In fact, I don't even think we really recognized how good of a time we had it because that's when we started. It was actually when the market started to increase again and those values coming back, say 2016 through 2020, 21, that we consider those years the great sell-off when a lot of people that fell into rental ownership began selling their properties because they were recouping their losses and they're moving into other asset classes.
There's not a whole lot of businesses where you can do well during a great market and even better during a recession, right?
It's a great business, Frank. It really is. One of the challenges I'll say is that and this can be a blessing and a curse for our franchise partners that come in, is they can make a great income with a small portfolio, and they can make a great income with a larger portfolio and a scaled business. And it's actually sometimes challenging to get them to move into larger stages of growth because they're actually doing really well at a lower size business.
I want to step back to the earlier years. So you mentioned Aaron Marshall, your co-founder, who obviously sounds like super inspirational and somebody who, wasn't afraid to take risks and somebody who really took the ball and ran with it. You hear about stories that of partnerships that, they start out good, they go bad. It doesn't always work out, but it sounds like with you and Aaron, you sound like to me, you guys probably had a pretty special relationship. And unfortunately, I know that you shared in the pre-call about Aaron's passing. And I want you to share with the audience, I want you to focus on the partnership and what happens when challenges like that arise.
Yeah, and it's actually, every time I talk about it and go through some of the story, it's actually healing for me because I had never up to this point lost someone so close to me. I'd lost grandparents, I'd lost other people that I knew. But when you have a business partner, it's more than a brotherhood, right? I mean, it's more, he and I were close in so many ways, and you go through so much struggle, trial, difficulty, success, and your blood, sweat, and tears together. And to lose someone like that, obviously, it's a life-changing experience. But one of the things, interestingly, early on, when we first met, we just instantly connected on several things. One, we knew that family was number one. Our families came first. We aligned in our vision. We aligned in our values, which is critical for any partnership. In fact, I see when I evaluate partnerships, and we have, of course, partnerships as our franchisees are coming on board. We consider them partners. We even use that terminology of partners. And if they have a partnership, we talk about the importance of alignment in those two key areas: vision, which can include, of course, purpose and mission and direction and how we do things. And then, of course, values, which is who we are at the core, how we make those decisions based on how we're wired and how we view life and those sort of things. And we had that. Aaron and I had that, which we knew that we could get through any challenges together. And of course, we had our fair share of disagreements and challenges, as good partners have. You've got to have a little bit of yin and yang. And he was definitely that push and that person that would jump into things with very little plan. He just always had faith and knew that things would work. And then I would be there, maybe a little bit of pull and saying, okay, let's think about how we're going to do this. And it just worked that way. And it really allowed us to get things done and to progress. But when you have the partnership, and I know that there's listeners potentially that have partnerships either on the franchisor side, franchisee side, wherever it is. And even when I think about marriage and spouses and those partnerships, that alignment is critical. absolutely foundational.
Mm-hmm.
And having conversations about that, and then having the difficult conversations of, okay, how are we going to get through this disagreement? How are we going to get through this obstacle that we're facing? And being willing to enter what I call the danger zone of vulnerability and not just skirting issues, because we actually had some challenges that we had to seek outside help for to help us get through. And that was one amazing thing that we were both willing to do, is to seek out help when we needed help in our partnership. But nothing could have prepared us for Aaron's diagnosis of cancer. Nothing, we obviously, in fact, I had a conversation recently with his wife, his widow, who she and I are actually, it's kind of amazing. She and I are partners in the franchise now. Mm-hmm. I bought her out of a couple other businesses. We actually had a corporate owned store and location, our very first location, bought her out of that, but we remain partners. She doesn't have an operating role, but we meet regularly. She's involved, and she's becoming more and more instrumental in some of the things that we're doing. But having a conversation with her that 3 years ago, when we were mapping out our 3-year picture, we had no clue that this obstacle, this challenge with Aaron and his diagnosis would come about. But we've got to be prepared to know how to respond when difficult things happen. And the way that we responded, of course, was laying out a succession plan. We already had that before we even knew of the diagnosis. And I think for any partnership, you've got to have some kind of, even if it's a loose succession plan, in the event that one of us should have something happen to us that makes it so we can't operate or we pass away, whatever that is. Making sure we've got life insurance, mm-hmm. That's critical. Key man policies on each other. It's amazing how many business owners and partners that I've talked to over the last couple of years that don't have that. And it makes it very challenging to, whether there's a buyout involved or whatever it is, it just makes it more stressful. We did have that gratefully that allowed us to have some of that flexibility and room. But then also, how are we going to communicate this to the network, right? We had a lot of our team, of course, our corporate team, franchise partners that truly love and loved Aaron as a friend, as a mentor. So being willing to be open about it. He started a blog where he talked about his experience with cancer throughout the process. He was very communicative about it. I was communicating things as things started to get more difficult towards the end. It was kind of challenging too, because he started doing very, very well. Two months before he passed, we thought he had beat it. And Frank, that was really encouraging and very discouraging to come to find out the next week that things just kind of blew up, as far as just the growth and everything. He had stage 4. He was diagnosed with stage 4 colon and appendix cancer. Oh. The reason he found out about it was his appendix burst. And that's how they found the cancer. And it was unfortunately really too late. But communicating regularly and often to the network is something that really brought us together more, and the franchise partners supporting him, praying for him, all those different things was really building and growing of our culture and allowed us to be strong throughout that process. And then as he was getting close to passing, we actually had a very close friend, mentor, and the founder of CGI franchise, Art Coley, that many people know, who we were working with for some of our franchise development recruitment processes. And he just said, you know what? He was really close with us and with Aaron. He just said, if you need me to step in as an interim CEO for a little while you're transitioning and then healing and going through this, he said, I will do that. And so a few weeks before Aaron passed, he stepped in, and that was just such a blessing and such a lift to our organization to have his experience and his strength to help the network get through that. All along, I was still communicating with the franchisees, but being able to step away a little bit more, spend more time with Aaron and his family, help Andrea, his wife, and kids kind of work through that process. It was just really impactful. So that's another lesson, is like, never be so prideful that thinking that we don't need that help, mm-hmm. and having people and mentors around us that can recognize opportunities for them to help and being willing to accept that was really important for me and for us. And so fast forward, he passes away in June of 2021, and Art remains as interim CEO. I stepped back in as COO with him in November. And then the following June, stepped in again as CEO. And since then, it's just amazing to see how we still maintained 30% growth year over year during that time. Franchisees continued to win and find success. And we all miss Aaron. We pay tribute to him often, but we're stronger because of what we went through. And I truly believe that as we pass through the storms of life, there's always sunshine waiting on the other end, regardless of how difficult, how dark, how challenging. If we just keep moving forward and taking the next step, life hands us sunshine because it's always waiting for us.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.